Hello, Cultureel. Welcome to this interview with a fishtail director, Emmanuelle Mayer. So we just enjoyed this wonderful, very captivating film, and we're gonna have a conversation around it, and hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy the interview. So well, first, thank you so much, Emmanuelle, for being with us through Zoom, and also
Thank you
for
so much for having me. I'm really happy, really happy.
thank you. It's very nice to have this film in our Cultureels Festival this year, and yeah. So we'll start the interview, and maybe first, if you wanted to talk a bit about yourself, your background as a person, as a filmmaker, and how this film came to be.
Well, I'm actually, my background as a professional is a cinematographer. That's what I did most of my life, professional life. I filmed other people's documentaries. And as a cinematographer in documentaries, I came very close to directing, to being in documentary situations, but always behind the camera. And I love this position because the position of being behind the camera and being part of people's life and so many people's lives, because I filmed really many documentaries, is amazing. And there's also something about being number two and not number one in a documentary, that I don't need to have the responsibility on my shoulder about people's life, because making a documentary about a family, a person, is, whether they're alive or whether even they're not alive anymore, it's a very, very big responsibility. And I think that I was always afraid of taking that step. And this film, I never really made the step, because this film started as, just I was interested in foreign workers living in Tel Aviv, in Israel at the time. It was about 15 years ago when I started this film. There was a certain street in South Tel Aviv where you would find many foreign workers from many different countries and many different cultures in that same street. And I would walk by that street and always look around, and there were Chinese people cutting hair in the street, and there were churches of Africans. And Israel is Israel is a Jewish state, and most of the people are Jews. We have some Christians, we have, of course, Muslims. I don't need to tell you, but I never got to meet and see many foreigners in Israel. And suddenly there's this one street where so many people are there, and I would just walk through there and look at them and be so interested in other cultures. And then I just found myself invited into a church, and with my camera, and they said, you can come up, you can film if you're interested, come in. And it was a West African church, very, very noisy, guitars, drums. And I was filming, I was amazed. People were dancing and so beautiful and colorful, and dresses and everything. And then someone came up to me and he was trying to tell me something, but it was so noisy so I couldn't hear. And then I just gave him my number. I said, okay, let's talk. I don't understand what you're saying, but call me. And he called me a few days later. That was Johnny. And he said to me, listen, I saw you have a camera. Well, I'm a camera person myself, but I don't know how to use my camera, and I don't have anyone who can teach me. Will you be my camera teacher?
Wow.
And I said, yeah, sure, let's meet. And we met. And I came to him. I met Therese, I met his wife. At the time, they didn't have children yet. They were a young couple in Israel. And I became his camera teacher. He had this great camera. It was much better than the one I had at the time. I was a student. And he said to me, I don't have anyone to learn from. There's this one photographer in the community. and he won't teach me because he doesn't want he doesn't want to have competition, so he's not teaching me, and I just don't have anyone to learn from.
Right.
And that was, I think, moment when I realized how different our lives were, because I just couldn't understand this concept of, what do you mean you don't have anyone to learn from? I was in university at that time. I had my teachers, I had YouTube, I could order books by Amazon, I could ask anyone, knowledge was something that was very open to me. And here comes this guy, and he's very smart, and he has a good camera. And he's saying to me, I don't have anyone to learn from. I saw you with a camera, so, I saw this chance. And I think that it teaches a lot. This moment teaches a lot about Johnny, because he's the one who reached out to me. He began this friendship, and he began this connection, which became later a film. And that was, I think, my part in his life for the next 10 years. I was his pipeline to knowledge.
Right.
Every time he wanted to learn something, and he was always wanting to learn new things, 3 times a week. He had new ideas. He would call me and say, can you teach me how to open Facebook? Can you teach me how to edit? Can you teach me Photoshop? Can we do this? Can we do that? And having me by his side gave him a lot of courage, and he could trust himself, and he became a photographer in the community. He would film weddings and events, and a good one. And he even brought me to film with him a few times when he needed an extra camera person along with him later on, and he became a really good photographer.
Oh.
So this film actually began through friendship,
Yes.
and through common interest and interests. He needed me. I was very much interested in his culture, in his life. It was very different than what I knew.
Yeah.
And only later on, when they began to talk about, when I started knowing them a little bit more, and they began to talk about the day they would want to go back to Africa, that's the day I said, okay, I'm interested in discovering how these people, these fascinating people, what will happen the day they go back to Africa after so many years living in Israel. What's it going to be like? And that was the beginning point of starting to see what's going to happen. I didn't think of a film. I didn't think of the story yet. I didn't know where it was going to go. But that's when I started filming here and there. But all through those years of filming, and it was 10 years of filming, I think that the friendship and the intimacy and being close to Johnny and to Therese, and later on to their children, was the most important thing for me. And that the rest is something that happened. The film was born out of friendship, and that's something I think amazing and very, very rare, and that I'm very, very thankful of.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. That was very descriptive, and that, I think, is one of the things that makes the film so intimate and unique. And you can really tell, that you're invited even to when Innocent is having a bath. You're there when he receives the news of his father having passed away. You're there in these very crucial moments, and even the way the film starts, it's like bringing us straight to one of maybe the most difficult moments in his life. Like, he's speaking on the phone. He's like, I haven't heard from my wife. She's not back in the village. And like, he's in crisis. So this is really like a testament to just the real authentic relationship that you've cultivated with him. So
Definitely,
that really,
he was
yeah,
involved. He was involved in the film because I was involved in his life.
yeah,
We had something. We had this agreement. It was Like, I help him with everything he needs. I would have done it anyway.
Yeah.
But and he understands that I'm trying to make a film, and he will help me with anything he can with this film. And he also believing that it can be a good film and that I will make it something that will be good for them. But that was a big worry for me all through the way. How am I going to tell this story? What story is it going to be? And how is it going to help them and not hurt them in any way? That was definitely something I was thinking of all the time. A lot of responsibility, worries, that I'll be able to tell the story in a way that they will see it and say, okay, yes, this is our story. This is the way we wanted it to be told.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's definitely something that like is probably very crucial to filmmaking, and it's also one of the questions, or basically like a mirror question that I had, was that, you know, what were things that were on the one hand important to you as a filmmaker in portraying, you know, Johnny, his family, his life, his struggles and everything, and what was on the other hand important for Johnny, his family, in portraying their lives and their situation and everything.
I think he trusted me very much. I don't remember him telling me, you know, tell this, don't tell that. At certain points, he maybe it was important for him that Israeli people watch this film. This was something that he was telling me a lot. You know, Israelis need to see this film. They need to hear my story. They need to see my side of the story. They need to see it from the inside. I think that was something that was important to him. And every time I show the film to Israeli people, whatever ages, I tell them that for Johnny, it's very important for them to see it.
Yeah.
As Israelis, and you know, and I think Israelis, it's true. They do see the film. They are surprised a lot of the time because there is a very big segregation between the communities in Israel, between foreign workers and the rest of the communities. The only way Johnny and me could have met was if he would clean my house. There's no other places where we can meet, because in Israel, as a non-Jew, usually you will not be able to stay here a long time, and you will not become Israeli. And then from that, everything is cut away. And then the schools are usually, they won't be together, or, you know, it's like they're passengers here and they're inside their communities. And then there's no way we could have met, and of course not begun a relationship, a friendship.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that was very important to him. He had very good connections with his employees. We only see one in the film, but there were a few more. But that was always relationships between a boss and worker, even if they were very good, or it wasn't, they didn't know his real worries. They didn't know until the like all the way the issues that not that I did, of course not. You know, cultures are different. I'm sure we had masks. He had masks. I had masks.
Yeah.
But I think that was the most important thing for him. And of course, and for me, I wanted to show them in a respectable way, to show and to show how strong they are, and of course not to hurt them, like not to tell anything that could in some way hurt their future or any of that. That was something that was all along very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that it's like a very kind of situational, contextual fine line between, because sometimes we see documentaries that, they're almost like poverty porn, where it's very much indulging in someone's like struggles or problems, and it's somehow, like it can become very one-sided where the focus is only on that and you don't see things like joy, like or other things, or then it can become the other way around where it's, almost like a slum tourism where, you see that these people are having a very hard life, but they're so happy. So, it's probably not a problem, and we start to admire them for that without maybe being moved by their struggles in some ways. So I think that's very true what you say, like, to how to navigate this sort of, territory of wanting to, like, in the best way possible, communicate their story in a way that, is true to them and still true to their struggles, but that doesn't sort of, make it all about that. And you can really see, the as well the moments of joy, when they're getting married, when they have their kids, and when Johnny as well, when he gets to start at this fish facility and he calls his brother, and it's just a moment of joy, which is so nice. And a bit off of that, like, because you talked about this topic of communities being sort of segregated, and I was curious about, this film being shown in Israel, like, from, we all have our cultural lenses, and so of course someone from Israel will view it in a different way than someone from Finland, like myself. But I was curious about, from an Israeli perspective, or for an Israeli viewer, what do you think are the most striking things about this film and about Johnny's and Teresa's story? Or, is this a quite common story or uncommon, or what is like the most somehow striking or shocking for? Yeah.
I think that first of all, it's not a very common story, because if we look around us, if it's in Israel, if it's in Europe, how many African immigrants or refugee or asylum seekers, but even let's look at the immigrants. How many of them came to Europe or to Israel? How many want to go back to Africa? I mean, most of them fled either war or poverty, or maybe they would love someday to go back, but actually making your plans on starting your life again in Africa, not many, unfortunately. And Johnny, I think it's a very different story, because he's like, a fish swimming against the stream. He believes in the future of Africa. He says, yeah, I will go back there and I'm going to make something, and my life there is going to be good. And so I think he's different. He's different.
Right.
Start with that, and looking around other people in his community, or even in other communities. Most of the people, if they can find a way to get to Europe or to stay in Israel, or however life is hard here, they would prefer that most of the time, for them, for their children. So I think that. And your other question was about?
From an Israeli perspective, like,
what did they find most striking?
Yeah.
I think that I was expecting more political reflections, like people saying, they shouldn't be here, or they should be here, or that this would be a topic that the film would bring up.
Right.
But it doesn't. It's surprising. Maybe something about the fact that it's not about that. It's about a family. It's about a man. It's about a woman. It's about it's about the West and first world, third world, but I think it's mostly about choosing your life and how destiny sometimes comes in the middle, or the decisions that you make for your life. So I think that Israeli people, they just feel, they just say, oh wow, we're mother, father, children, children staying there. They left them when they were 4 months. So I think they feel, and then they don't look at the color, and maybe that's what's striking for them, the fact that they can associate, and that they can feel something so strong for people who they don't know. And I had this one reflection a few weeks ago, this Israeli guy who saw the film, and he said, now every time I walk in South Tel Aviv and I see this African guy looking for work on it, I will think of Johnny. Now, of course, every person has his own story, and there's millions of stories, and so many different African communities in Tel Aviv, and each one is, and most of the population that is in Israel today, the Africans are asylum seekers, and that's a different story than Johnny. But still, he was trying to say that, I just saw them as one big thing, and suddenly there's like a window to someone's life. So, and this guy, hey, I could talk to him and I could feel like him, and there's something about him that, I could be his friend maybe. So I think that's a thing that people would find shocking. That's it. That's what I think.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful then, because it's like, that's sort of what, ideally, I guess people would want to achieve with their films, but it doesn't maybe always turn out that way. And, like in the beginning, as you said, you thought this is probably the effect it's going to have, like people will focus on politics or on
I was actually afraid of that.
Yeah.
I was afraid of that because then, it can really fast, it can become, especially here where I live in South Tel Aviv, this issue is very hot because there's many asylum seekers who are all in this area, and there's many conflicts, and it's a very jumpy topic, very easily. And even when I screened the film here in this area, I would expect people to come and say and start this talk, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen because it's not that the film is not political. I think definitely that it is, but it comes from the personal, so I'm happy about that. I'm happy that people are, and I'm not saying anything about any other Black person walking in South Tel Aviv. I'm saying something about Johnny and Therese and their story, and something more, about life, about humans, and about also the situation in the world, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like something about this, your unique standpoint in making this film that I was also very curious about is, how, because there's, on the one hand, there's, you and you're familiar with this context. So like you are filming basically in your own like backyard, if you will. And then on the other hand, there's Johnny and Teresa, and they're in this context, but they didn't grow up in this context. And it's just like a very interesting and something that I was thinking about, that how, and also because of the relationship you developed with them, how was that, to see, I don't know if actually, you had challenging moments together with them in real life, but I think we get a bit of a taste of it, in your film, the moment where they go to this sort of demonstration, and there is some hostility, like racism and these, topics, like how was it, were you ever in those situations where you were confronted with those things, and how did you navigate that, or how did it impact you?
First of all, a lot of the time I was a guest in their world. It's a very small world inside a few streets in Tel Aviv, very close to my street, but still, it's like I was invited inside their world, even if it's their house, or going with them to other friends or the church or events, or I even did some trips with them to other parts of Israel, seeing it from their point of view, because they're Christians, so they would go sometimes on Saturdays to Christian places in Israel that I'd never been to, so I would see it through their eyes. So I was a guest in their community, but then suddenly Johnny could, give it back to me and remind me that definitely this is my place. Like one time I was late because the clock changed and I forgot, and I was late for something we scheduled, and I said, I'm so sorry, how come you didn't remind me? It was an important thing, it was like a wedding or something I was shooting with him. And I said, how come you didn't tell me that, that the clock changes? And he looked at me and said, it's your country, why are you looking at me? And that would like shock me for a second, and I would remember that, for him, he's a guest here all the time. And sometimes he would be angry about things that he heard, and he wouldn't put it on me, but he would say, your country is like this, and look at your I would tell him what I think about it, and we could talk about things like that. But definitely he reminded me that I'm on the strong side. Things that he wanted to do and he couldn't. He wanted to buy a car. So because he was like, his status was never really, not here or not there. So if he wanted to buy a car, he needed to put it on the name of an Israeli person. So he asked me, could I put the car in your name? It was when we only started to know each other, and I said, no, this stresses me. I don't want to have someone's car in my name. I don't know what if something happens, and but these are situations that I didn't even know exist, and I learned through this. So it was very, very interesting for me to see things through his eyes. And I think it was interesting for him to see things through my eyes. They would ask me a lot of things. And also they would make fun of me a lot because I was this very curious friend who would always ask so many questions. Like if they would get a bag from Africa or something coming from the post of all these plants that they would put in alcohol that would be medicine for their eyes or for this or for that, I would always like, wow, tell me about it. Can I taste it? What does this do? What does that do? Food, of course, everything that they would cook. And that was things that I absolutely loved. So they would always laugh at me, I have so many questions. I'm always asking all these questions. But I think that's part of of what this was for both of us. And a certain moment that I can remember is that when Innocent was born. Not the twins. We see in the film we see the twins born. Innocent already exists, but even before that, when Innocent was born, I helped them. I was with them at the hospital, and the doctor asked Teresa, "Is this your first birth?" And at the time, I didn't know about the twins left in Africa. They hadn't told me. So I answered for her, and I said, "Yes, this is her first birth." And then Teresa looks at me, and she says to the doctor, she says, "Translate, please, that no, it's not my first birth. I had a birth before twins." And I, of course, translated. And later on, after a few weeks later, I asked her about it. And I said, what was that? And then she said, yeah, we have twins. We left them when they were 4 months old. And this is something painful. We don't like to talk about it a lot. We don't speak to them a lot either because there's not much ways to do it. And that was a moment that I realized that I have no idea. There's so much I don't know. But I was happy that that she decided to tell me, and later on we could talk about it more.
Yeah, that's like a big trust, like being so intimately part of that. And I guess over the course of 10 years, it's a very long time. And I'm curious about how your relationship with them developed over those 10 years, and also how that maybe shaped you or changed you, and then how it led to you sort of doing this documentary in this way, or how did you choose what to include or exclude, or just like sort of the setup or the model.
Over the 10 years, I met who's my husband today, Sassy, and I got married, and then Sassy became also a friend, and it was like they were, of course, in our wedding, and I think we became closer, and they knew some of my friends, and of course my family, and I knew some of their friends, and we became closer. We knew that we could ask each other things, like if he needed something, if he was stuck somewhere, and he was afraid that maybe the police will come, and he was not with a car, and he didn't have his visa that day, or he could ask me to come and fetch him. It's not something that would happen often, but he knew that he could call me, and I'd do anything I can to come. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's about like the families, and I think that it's something we didn't speak about, but it's my first long film as a director, and I was trying to get a budget for this film, and I was always like sending it to television channels and like writing the things, and I would just get no, over and over again for all these 10 years. And the fact that I didn't have anyone, not a producer or a television channel or anyone, to give information to, or to go back and say, okay, look, this is what's happening. I think that was very good eventually. It was difficult, of course, because I had to make the film with zero budget. I was filming everything, and I was editing everything at a certain point. Norma Meet, who's the editor of the film, just said, okay, I want to do this because I see how much it's important for you, and I believe in it. So he did it with me. But the fact that I owed nobody any answers helped me, I think, make this film in my way. I didn't need to tell someone else's story. I just said to myself, if at any moment I feel that I don't want to tell the story anymore, then I just put everything away. 10 years of work, I don't care, and that's it. And then that option let me just continue and continue and continue. And the fact is that I didn't know, over these 10 years, I didn't know if anyone would ever see the film. I didn't know if anyone would ever see what I was working on. Of course, I was doing tons of other things during those 10 years. I was, but still, this is something I never knew if someone would see the film. And only after finishing it, the real test of the film began. And then it came out to the world, and it was in an Israeli festival, and it won 2 prizes, and then it started going to New York, and then it was sold to a Turkish channel.
Nice.
That means that the film was shown in a Turkish channel before it was shown in an Israeli channel.
Wow.
And only after the Turkish channel and Israeli channel said, okay, we'll buy it for Israel as well.
Wow.
So it's a very, very strange and different way of a film. I think that the fact that I didn't know if anyone would ever see it, it was very difficult for me, but it allowed me to make it the most authentic and truthful to myself way that I could.
Yeah.
And the fact that it came out and it's like a miracle. Every time people see it, I say, wow, this is a miracle. And also I think it can give a lot of strength to filmmakers who are working on their films and saying, I don't know if anyone's ever going to see this, and I've been working on it for so long, and who knows if this will ever come out. So I think that is something, this film can give hope, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Congratulations on that process, because that's it's a long time, and I'm sure it's not always been easy, and it probably was a good approach, to take the pressure off and just make it authentic, in a sense, and then find the sort of thread through those 10 years to craft it into a 50-minute story. So very well done. And something about because obviously there are, different themes that emerge through the film. But I'm curious about what, for you as the director, what do you see as, the central themes or questions or challenges that this film seeks to raise or convey?
I think that most of all, it's a film about a family.
Yeah.
And I think man perspective, woman perspective is also an issue that is very interesting for me and that I looked at a lot. And fate, how much fate versus control over your life we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see the different perspectives as well from Teresa and Johnny, sort of in how they navigate, the basically what they envision for their futures, and then that breaking point where Teresa just changes everything. And how was that for you, that major change, and I guess you moved, between those different locations a few times, but how was it, being part of that? Did you know anything or feel anything coming before it happened, or?
I didn't know anything. I didn't feel anything. Only looking back at the footage after Therese did what she did, I recognized a few little hints that I really tried to put in the film to prepare a little bit the ground for what he would do. But no, definitely not. This was very, very surprising for me. And what happened is that after I was with him at the airport and I came back with Johnny to Tel Aviv, and then a few days later I was calling him and he wasn't calling me back, and I didn't understand what happened. I started worrying, and eventually he called me and he said, okay, something happened, just come to my house without a camera and let's talk. And I came and he was really I've never seen him that way. He's really depressed and thin. He hadn't been eating, and he told me. He said, "What happened?" He told me what happened, and I was I was really, really, really shocked, and I just tried to help him during these weeks of shock for for him, like what is he going to do, what's going to happen with him. And I think he let himself like be in that shock for a few weeks, and then he just caught himself and he made a decision that, okay, this is a situation and these are the steps that I'm going to take, and then he started taking them. But I think that like for me, I was so involved that I didn't care. Again, I didn't care about the film. I didn't even think of how am I going to tell this. When I told friends, they said, "Wow, this is amazing for your film." I was like, I don't care. I don't care. Can you understand what's happening? I mean, what's going on there? What's with her? And only later, and I said, okay, later on, I'll find out if I can tell the story. How should I tell it? I'll find a way. This is not, let's just get over this period now and see. And after I saw that he was better, I reached out to Therese and I spoke to her. And when I came back from shooting my friend's film in Italy, I said to Therese, I'll come by. I'll catch a plane to Holland and I'll come see you. And I was already with the equipment because I was shooting in Italy. And I came to her and I said, I'll hear her story on camera. I'll hear her side. And there was something difficult because I could feel that Johnny was not angry at me, but he was feeling it was hard for him that I could just get on a plane and go see his wife, and he couldn't. That was something hard for him. But definitely, I think that those moments of what happened were very, very eye-opening for me. About what what you think how complicated their life is. There's no way I could understand what she did at that moment. It took me years later, I think, to realize what she did, and that's also why it took some time for the film to become later, because I had to understand what she did. I had to put it into context and to make people understand her. I didn't want her to be like the bad person in this story. I wanted people to understand, viewers to understand why she did this, what she was thinking, and that they'll be able to relate also with her story and her act, which is very harsh.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very, like, the way that's portrayed is very, like, it's such a cliffhanger in the moment when it happens, and at the same time it makes total sense, because, and that's relates back to, I think, what you said earlier, that there's that deeply human, perspective or connection where I guess anyone who, maybe has kids, they could relate to her choice, and the way she explains it, especially with her background, where she says that, our mothers couldn't give us what we needed, and she wants to be able to do that for her kids. So it's it makes sense. Do you think though that, so I guess there's on the one side the culture that both Johnny and Teresa grew up in, and then them being in Israel, how do their sort of, different maybe gender expectations or how do they navigate like these different constructs of culture, religion, and resistance, power, racism, all these different themes or topics? How does that play out, and how do you see them navigating that in like their lives?
It's a big question, or big questions. Maybe I'll just try to answer more like the gender part. I think I can answer more easily. That Johnny would tell me that Israel changed him because he learned in Israel that him and his wife are equal because they both work and they both take care of the children, they both do everything. And he would say, in Africa, the women would both work and take care of the children, and the men would do this and not do that. And, here in Israel, he learned those things that they're more equal. In other ways, I don't know. I think it's a big question that I don't think I can answer for them.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. I was just thinking if, within the Israeli context, if like, I wonder if that would have been a big cultural shock, for
Definitely.
them.
Definitely. I think they were expecting, like Johnny came because his sister was already in Israel and she brought him, and also because of Christianity, Israel, they were, so I think that was the first shock, coming to Israel and seeing, it's not a holy land, it's, just a place. It's also holy for some people, but, it's not what they would imagine.
Right.
And also, I think at the beginning, he would say to me, why do Black people in Israel only work as a, I don't know the word, when you're in charge of checking people's bags at the entrance of like a theater or something, and I would say, and that was his point of view, and suddenly I realized that this is what he sees, that Black Jews do certain works, and I would see things through his perspective, which I hadn't seen before. And that's an important thing to think about, because there are Ethiopians living in Israel who are Jews. And Johnny, when he drives in the car, I don't know if you noticed this because it's very culture, but he looks for a kippah and he puts a kippah on his head. And he's not Jewish. He's not doing this because of religion. He's doing this because he's very wise, and he realized that having a kippah on your head in Israel, looking from far away, gives you some sort of protection, because you're stereotyped as probably an Ethiopian Jew, etc. And then it's like, okay, he's this, he's not that. And he understood that this is something that is, of course, better for him, and probably he'll be less checked or have the chance to be arrested or all that.
Yeah, exactly. Did you also experience in some ways that if you went with him maybe to certain appointments and, just by your presence, like you being there as an Israeli, do you think that changed the outcome potentially of certain meetings, or, like that some kind of, like it shifted some power structures or hierarchies?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that having a camera on your side, it gave him strength, and it, but even just, when he came to me and he said, I want to study how to breed fish. Can you help me with that? So I just made a few phone calls. I had a lot of luck. I felt like, one of the first phone calls with the guy that we went to, and I told him, hey, and I'm making a film. And I think the fact that I said I'm making a film and I'm coming with a camera helped me open that door. But once we got there, it was totally him, because Ranan, the man there, he just saw Johnny and he saw how motivated he was, and he just wanted to help him. It didn't matter anymore that I made the connection or that there's a camera there. It was just, he said, okay, this guy really wants to succeed. He wants to go back to Africa and to make a change. I'm going to help him, and I'm not going to charge him nothing, So sometimes I would help make these connections, but eventually it was his character and his charisma that made things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, you can really also see that how he's really trying to, push for this change in his life and pursue opportunities, and he says, like, you know, the knowledge, what you learn is so important because no one can take that away from you. And you can really see how his dreams are sort of shattered in a sense when the plans totally change and he gives up on his dream of going back. And like the theme for our film festival, CULTUREELS, this year is power and resistance. And yeah, I was just curious, I would be curious to hear about your thoughts, how, you know, relating to your film, you know, like, and from having been there with Johnny and his family, like, do you have any thoughts on how individuals experience and resist power, or, you know, how power and resistance structure societies, individuals, and this whole dynamic?
I think that usually, like, when I think of resistance, I think of, you know, active resistance, you know, like fighting or talking against something or going to demonstration, or this is like my way of thinking of resistance. But that's a very privileged way of thinking of resistance, because I think the resistance of Johnny is much like more in the everyday life, in putting a kippah on his head, understanding that this would give him some protection, in reaching out to me to get knowledge, understanding that it's not going to come knocking on his door. Therese, in what she did, you know, hiding from her husband and doing something that was not really legal, and taking chances and being alone in Europe with 3 children. And, you know, that's their resistance. And it's much more like it's an everyday active doing. And I think maybe that was also an eye-opening for me. Like, if we think about, you know, resisting, it's like just, you know, living everyday life for them was like resistance, because they wanted to make a change. You know, even just coming to Israel was resistance for them, because they had a very, very, very poor life there, and they said, okay, we're going to leave 2 very small children, and we're going to go to a different country, because we want eventually to do something better, to change, not to be like our mothers. So all that is resistance.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you, like, when making this film, did you think about those like topics or themes, as in, like, did you draw on any particular theories or techniques or analytical frameworks?
No, I think it was very intuitive.
Yeah.
And very like coming from a human connection.
Yeah.
No, I think I drew more like things from real life than from theories or from film.
Yeah. And do you feel that, so my sort of final question is, like, kind of, you know, looking back, looking forward, like, how does this film, it's your first film with you as director, but you've been part of different projects before, how do you see that this you know, fits as within like the visual or ethnographic landscape that you've been part of creating and making, and what would you, you know, envision for your future, or do you have a next project coming up or something?
I think that everything that I'm interested in is very much, you know, people who are different than me, and how do they live, and like to discover the day-to-day life and the small things life is built out of. If it's religion or food or, you know, shops or whatever, you know, where you buy your products, or all things that's I've always been very, very much interested in that, and what it's like to be an immigrant, to be living in a place that is not yours. My parents immigrated from France when I was 4 years old to Israel. We're a French family.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that that's issues that I was also, you know, interested in. We grew up like in a family that is, we had like no grandparents, no cousins, no, because we were like only us here, like in this country. So I think also being an immigrant is something that has always interested in me, even though I came here when I was 4. It's more like my parents' generation, but still. I am working on a new project. It's very, 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 very different because it's about a woman who's not alive anymore. She's been dead for 10 years. But she spent a lot of her life in Africa.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so that is one common topic. And also she was a very, very strong woman. She was a journalist, and she had also a very difficult life story. And the connection between her life, her professional life, and her personal life is something that fascinates me. But there's also something I really need to tell if people stayed until this moment. Yes. So I want to give a little bit of optimism and to say that something about Johnny and Therese today.
Yes.
That 2 years after the film finished, Johnny found a way to get to Europe. Yes. And he joined Therese and their 3 younger children in Europe, and they moved to Belgium.
Yes.
And about a year and a half ago, they did the impossible, which is they managed to bring the older twins, which were almost 18 by that time, to live with them in Europe. Wow. And then they became a family of 2 parents, 5 children from the same parents, but children who had never met each other. Imagine that, living in the same house.
Wow.
And that today their life is, I think, good. You know, Johnny, he loves his work and he's very much appreciated, and the children, you know, go to good schools. And there was an European premiere of the film during COVID, so I couldn't go, but it was in a real cinema in Belgium. Wow. And they went, all 7, and they sat there in the audience, and they represented the film. And that was for me, like, you know, like finishing I could have never imagined. Wow. And Therese told me that after watching the film, the older twins suddenly started asking all these questions, saying, you know, wow, this is what your life looked like. This is how you lived in Israel. This is what you worked in. This was what it was for you to be in Europe alone with 3 children. Suddenly, like, they saw 10 years of their family's life that they missed out. Wow. In a film, and that it opened up something that maybe can begin a little bit of healing also inside this family. And that's, I think, the most amazing thing that this film has done so far.
Wow. Wow, that's very powerful. That's beautiful. Like, and that's, you know, like, probably if you ever have any moment of doubt, then you know that, like, even this massive change for them, like, you know, because these twins, they probably couldn't have discovered that if you hadn't been filming so much. So it's probably a life-changing thing for them to sort of see what their parents went through also for them. So that's very powerful. So thank you. I think that, yeah, do you have anything you would like to add? Anything more, or any comments, final thoughts?
No, I think I spoke enough.
Yes. Okay. Well, It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Emmanuelle.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this long labor of love and sort of project of faith, you know, not knowing what it's going to turn into. And it turned into this very beautiful, impacting film. So thank you so much. And very much looking forward to seeing your next projects. And yeah, thank you for being with us at CULTUREELS.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.